Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. Lovely to see you. I hope that you're here because you want to learn and develop more and start thinking about setting up your own enterprises, setting up your own businesses, empowering yourself. So that I have to speak over the the motorbike that's passing. Empowering yourselves to take action. Now, we've had an absolutely fabulous morning with Debbie, just giving you the motivational speech to help you get in the mood. And I hope that I can reference her speech in mine. Now, the first thing that you will need to be aware of in business, those of you who already have got businesses and those of you who are planning to join businesses, the very first and the most important thing that you can do is to establish trust. Now, I know that sounds a bit of a surprise, and actually, that dog-eat-dog, cutthroat, stab-in-the-back attitude that you see on television, such as in The Apprentice, is not my experience of how business works. Actually, the whole city was based, and the bankers may have forgotten this, on trust. You have to trust your investors. You have to inspire trust in your investors. You have to trust your suppliers that they will do what they say they will do. Now, if we're looking at trust, I wonder, hands up, how many of you watch Grand Designs? Fabulous. Do you remember that episode on Grand Designs where you saw a mature couple, a pair of artists, who'd bought a house, a very tumbled down house in southern Italy, and wanted to do it up? Now, what I found inspiring was when the guy decided that he wanted to build a Roman arch. Okay? Now, what you do, apparently, is you take a wooden frame like that, and stone by stone, you build that arch. And then you put the keystone in place. Yeah? Well, I think that is the most brilliant metaphor for trust, building trust between you and somebody else. There's you and the other person. Okay, so how do you build trust with somebody? If you were thinking about the people you know and trust, know, like and trust, what are the essentials, what are the essential ingredients that make you trust that other person? Anyone?
Instinct.
Instinct is a good one. Instinct or intuition. Loyalty. Transparency. Honesty.
Word of mouth. Recommendation.
Others refer. Recommend. Ah, interesting. Shared values. Sorry? Rapport. Very important. See, we're busy building up stone by stone. And every stone is important. Every stone is necessary, otherwise the whole thing collapses. Remember that Roman arches, some Roman arches have stayed up and in place for 2,000 years. That's how strong an arch can be. This is how strong a relationship of trust can be if all these stones are in place. Now, I would suggest that's the keystone. That is where you demonstrate that the other person's interests are as important to you as your own. Now, I'll give you an example. There's an interesting book called The Trusted Advisor. And in that, he recounts the story of a lawyer. It's an American book, so this is an American lawyer who is young, who has just won a very wealthy client. Unfortunately, this wealthy client, who is CEO of a business, he's running a family-owned business. So some members of his board are family members. And you know what it's like between families. Yeah, they fell out. So much so that he is taking his board members, his family, to court. And there, on the steps of the courtroom, the lawyer looks at his client's face and he thinks, this is costing my client too much. And in that moment, and he says, I would recommend you settle. Settle at all costs, settle, because this is costing you too much. And he's giving up two things. One thing he could potentially be giving up is the client. The client may flounce off and say, well, you're no lawyer. I want to have somebody who will represent my best interests, take this to court and give them a good thrashing. And therefore, he could be losing his reputation. In that moment where he saw how much this was costing his client, and he demonstrated to his client how he cared for the client's best interest. That was the moment when the client trusted him. You know, in business, it's true that when somebody buys from you for a first time, they don't trust you yet. They're taking the risk of finding out. The second time they buy from you, that's when you know they trust you, or your product or service. Now, my subject is stand out from the crowd, leadership, gravitas and women. Gravitas. Now, here we've got a beautiful arch between two people of trust. I would suggest that gravitas is the ground on which that arch stands. It is firm, it is solid, it is enduring. Gravitas, according to the Romans, and it's a Roman word, gravitas is about taking something seriously. It usually was associated with the head of the family, who was, surprise, surprise, the man, the male head of the family. He was supposed to cultivate gravitas, a serious attitude, a solidity, a strength. Now, just to prove to you something about my strength, my solidity, I just wanted to show you the sort of people that I am accustomed to work with. Now, for example, with the University of Oxford, I work with the doctoral students at the Institute of Biomedical Engineering on their presentations and networking at conferences, crucially important to promote their research, as well as helping them to find jobs. getting researchers successfully hired is the programme. With Cisco, I was working with a client who was wanting to get to director level. As yet, she lacked the gravitas. She was told she lacked gravitas by her line manager, who happened to be a man. And what we did was we got her networking effectively so that she started influencing the people who make the decisions. Okay. That gives you a little idea and a little flavour of what I do. Now, that was my earn the right speech. How can I earn the right to speak to you unless I can give you something to chew on about my background? Actually, my company specialises in helping women and leadership teams under the Growth Accelerator process develop their ability to communicate effectively and influentially so that they promote their careers, they promote their businesses to the highest level. And particularly in the area of science, technology and engineering. I am no scientist or technologist or engineer. In fact, just to give you a little understanding of where I come from, I went to drama school. A long time ago now, but I went to drama school. And I trained at the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama. And then I went into teaching for 11 years. And then I retrained as a psychotherapist because I really wanted to understand much more about what motivated people, what made people tick, what was going on underneath. And my clients showed me, they educated me, they developed my expertise. And I discovered that I related best with people in business because, to be honest with you ladies, people in business, in my experience, are some of the bravest people I know. As Debbie said so rightly, change is risky. And when you're in business, you want to grow your business. Therefore, you are continually having to change and develop yourself as well as your company. Your company only grows if you grow too. Okay, now gravitas, that ground of your being. Hands up how many people have seen Gravity, the film Gravity. I find it fascinating that the main character, a woman, is called Stone. And actually, she is in zero gravity for most of the film. She has no gravity. She has no ground of her being. And she has to find the gravity within herself. That strength, that solidity, that stubbornness, that determination to make changes so that she can be safe. You know, in the film, gravitas and gravity comes from the word gravitas. Gravity is about safety, it's about home, it's about belonging, it's about being connected. And in this moment, I've obviously got very excited and pressed too many buttons here. In the film, she's very disconnected, very unsafe, in great danger. Now, ladies, one of the big challenges in business is we have to provide, as leaders, certainty. We have to sound certain. Here am I, looking at you. I hope that I'm coming across with a certain amount of certainty. Even though I may be wobbling inside, even though I may be way on the edge of my comfort zone, I hope that I am doing the best job I can of providing you with certainty so that you can follow what I'm saying. There was a very interesting piece of research in the New York Times Sunday Review, which said it was taking 28 companies and 287 people in those companies, and they were looking at the staff reviews, the annual review, the appraisal. They discovered that the female employees were more negatively criticised than the men. And of that negative criticism, 67% of it was personality-based. That, oh, well done, somebody needs some water here. That women were described as abrasive, aggressive, oh, you lovely woman, thank you. Abrasive, too confident. In fact, one of my clients was told that. Too aggressive. Do you know, can you guess the percentage of men who had personality-based criticism levelled at them? Remember, it was 67% of women. It was 2% of men. Indeed, you'll see a picture of Sheryl Sandberg, a heroine of mine, a little later. Sheryl Sandberg went into Cisco, my client told me this, talking to the senior team in Cisco. And she said to each member of the senior team, she said, "Gentlemen," she said, "hands up how many of you have been described as aggressive in your appraisals throughout your whole career?" No hands went up. Then she talked to the ladies. She said, "Ladies, how many of you have been described as aggressive by your line manager throughout your career?" Every single hand went up. That we have to tread a fine line as women between being liked and taking the tough decisions. That's the challenge, especially in the light of the fact that culturally we have not been used to being disliked. In fact, at times it has been dangerous. 2 women a week in this country get murdered by partners or ex-partners for not being liked, not doing the likeable, compliant thing. My grandfather, I may look old here, my grandfather was 20 years old before married women were allowed to own their own property, including their own earnings. So what I'm saying is, culturally, we are used to having to look for rapport and liking. However, in business, it tends to be based. Decisions of trust tend also to be based on respect. Do I respect you? Do you respect me? And that's the challenge for us, is to behave with certainty and as though we were worthy of respect. Now, so often we ladies have this challenge with being certain. You know, that one of the many issues that we have to contend with in our daily lives is to appear certain when we're not. Now, I'm going to ask you to do a little exercise for me right now, and that's this. The thing that builds self-esteem, that makes you more comfortable with sounding certain, is when you have high self-esteem. Now, to have high self-esteem, it's because you kept your promises to yourself. So what promises have you made to yourself that you haven't yet fulfilled? If you were to write them down or write it down, has it been that you promised to reduce weight? And by how much? Is it that you promised yourself that you were, Debbie suggested it, look at the people who are toxic in your life and look at the people who are supportive of your progress, help move you on. Is there a promise in there that you have made to yourself that you are going to withdraw from that toxic person? That person who criticizes you, who doubts you, who plays superior games with you. What are the promises that you have yet to fulfill? Now, I'd like to ask you, underneath that, what are the promises you have kept to yourself? The very fact that you're here means you have kept some. You promised to come here and you did. So what are the promises you have kept? As I said to you before, your business grows on the promises you keep for yourself. That is a very crucial issue, as well as the promises, of course, that you keep to other people. You do what you will say you will do. Now, I hope, like Debbie has suggested, that you do have a life plan or a life goal, something that, a vision of yours that you would like to fulfill. There's a kind of divine discontent about that thought. It's potentially a promise that you are making to yourself. I want to do this. Now, it would be helpful if you can see that it could be achievable and it could be time focused in how many years. Think about the promises you would like to make to yourself. Okay. That's how you get to arrive at certainty, to arrive at gravitas, at gravity, developing your gravitas. It's your intention. Right, now, here we go. Well, I would recommend that you have a look at a lovely video by a woman called Amy Cuddy, C-U-D-D-Y, Amy Cuddy, talking about your body language. Because she says, not only does your body language influence other people and their view of you and their decisions about you, and it's true that first impression gets made within 6 seconds, and you will have to take 20 encounters before they change that first impression of you. Okay? So your first impression is very important. She also says that actually your body language influences you. who you are, how you feel. So, I'm going to ask you, ladies, in a few moments' time, not just yet, in a few moments' time, I'm going to ask you to stand up. Okay? Amy Cuddy, who has done a lot of research on this, says that you can change your hormonal levels by the way you hold your body. In fact, people who occupy a lot of space and look as though they're very important, their testosterone level, that's their confidence level inside, goes right up. And yes, we ladies have testosterone inside us too. That gives us our drive, our energy, our focus. And the cortisol level, that's the stress hormone, goes right down when our body language changes. So first of all, I'd like you to adopt the low status. In other words, pulling yourself in, rounding yourself round, making yourself as small as possible. Okay? Okay, just feel that, how your body is distributed. Now, could you stand up, please, and occupy as much space as you possibly can? Lovely. Nice one. Stretch out as much as possible. Fabulous. Lovely. Okay. Notice the change in energy in this room. It's different, isn't it? Right, do sit down. Okay. Notice the change in energy in yourself, let alone in the room. See whether you can occupy as much space as is reasonable in limited space that you've got around you. See whether you can occupy plenty of space where you're sitting down now. Okay? Lovely. Good stuff. If you hold that pose for 2 minutes, and it only takes 2 minutes, your hormonal levels will change, your stress level will go down, and your testosterone level, your level of confidence and drive and energy goes up. Okay? And that's what you need when you are a leader in business. You need that drive, that energy, that confidence. As Amy Cuddy says, without compromising your authenticity, you've got to fake it till you become it. Okay? Until you believe it yourself. Fake it till you become it. Okay. How are we doing on time, Becky? Be still, my beating heart. Fabulous. I'm a notorious overrunner. I warn you about this, ladies. I'm sorry. So I've asked Becky to be very careful and very vigilant with me. Yeah. Right. Now, notice that you are much, much bigger, much more confident, much more important, much more dynamic and energetic than you necessarily even believe you are. And it's that dynamic, energetic superwoman your business needs, your family needs. As Debbie so rightly said, you know, I think we are, as women, we are in the family, we tend to be create the emotional weather. If we're blowing up a storm, the whole family feels it. If the sunshine comes out, then everybody basks in it. We are more powerful and influential than we know as women by our own outlook, what we provide. I'm going to give you a fine there.
Somebody talk about how amazing you are.
Thanks, Debbie. We all need to hear good things about ourselves from time to time, do we not, ladies? Okay, right. Now, I'm going to introduce you to the people that I really admire and respect. I strongly recommend that you choose some female role models that you admire and respect in your lives, to find out about them, to think about them, to see in what way you have connection with them, and see whether you can develop those aspects of your character. Right, may I introduce you to somebody I have referred to you? This lady. This lady is Sheryl Sandberg, S-H-E-R-Y-L, Sheryl Sandberg. She is Chief Operating Officer of Facebook. She was in the senior leadership team at Google. She is the first woman employee to become a billionaire, because she had the good fortune to own shares in Google and Facebook before they were famous. Sheryl Sandberg has written a very interesting book called Lean In. I strongly recommend you read that book, Lean In, about how to develop leadership in women in business. She has set up the Lean In Foundation, Lean In, the Lean In Foundation, and their first campaign, and I don't know whether you've come across it yet, is a campaign called Ban Bossy. Why should we ban the word bossy? How many boys or men have you talked about or heard about that have been called bossy? I'd be amazed if anybody in this room has come across a bossy man or a bossy boy. And yet, I imagine that a vast percentage of the women in this room have been called bossy in their time. I hope. She says that language, the way that we frame language, is the way that we can either empower or impede. And bossy is a word that says women shouldn't be leaders, girls shouldn't take the lead. If they do take the lead, they're just bossy. Okay. The BBC website called this lady Queen of Europe. And with very, very good reason. She was at what was the Berlin Wall a few days ago, putting in her rose. This lady, Angela Merkel, somebody as women we need to be proud of. She was born to a Protestant pastor in East Germany. Now, if anybody understands, it must have been a very difficult position to be a Christian and a pastor in communist East Germany. No doubt the Stasi took a very great interest in this family. She has now become a leader of a party that is southern, and as was West Germany, southern Germany, Bavaria, that is very male-dominated and Roman Catholic. And she has managed to forge alliances and coalitions so that she has led Germany into a period of growth and stability that has been unknown in modern times. I remember when I was at drama school, I was walking down Holly Hill one day to Hampstead, to the village of Hampstead, and I saw coming towards me a little family group, a woman, a man, and a child in a pushchair, and I instantly recognised her. It was Judi Dench, with her husband Michael Williams and her daughter Finty Williams. That, ladies, was 40 years ago. 40 years ago. This woman has been a household name for 40 years. Now, if that's not providing us with leadership, I don't know what is. And the way that she, for example, her role as M in James Bond. Now, that's a woman of gravitas who is willing to take the tough decisions and suffer for it. And I would say that actually you find your gravitas through your suffering. It's not in good times that you find out what you're made of. It's in the harsh, difficult times where you're feeling in zero gravity, where you've lost your bearings, where you don't know where you're headed, and you're feeling at 6s and 7s, and you may be being very criticised. That's when you discover who you really are. That's when you can establish yourself with other people. And this lady portrays it beautifully. And here is another lady who is discovering quite how big her brave is. This lady, Ellen Sirleaf Johnson, is president of Liberia. She and the citizens of Liberia are very much under the cosh thanks to Ebola. She has been in fear of her life. She has been under threat of death and imprisonment by former leaders of Liberia, and through it all she has promoted women's education, particularly education, and the advancement of women, because she feels so passionate about it. We wish her so much luck, and we wish her well, literally as well as metaphorically. These are my heroes. I could have chosen Wangari Maathai, who was the great environmentalist, but I wanted to show you women who are still alive. And Wangari Maathai, wonderful Kenyan, who made a massive contribution to the reforestation of Africa. Or Hillary Clinton, somebody else that I admire. Oh gosh, only 3 minutes. Right. As I warned you, didn't I? Now, I'm going to ask you to do something for me. One of the essentials of a leader in business or in life is to be self-aware, is to know what your impact is on other people. And how do you know what that impact is unless you are paying attention to what you think and how you say things. So I'm going to give you 1 minute of just paying attention to yourself and your thinking. Okay? This is going to be a mindfulness exercise. How to take notice of how you're sitting, of what you're thinking, how you're feeling, what's really going on. All right, ready? 1 minute, off you go. Okay. How are you doing? Did you learn anything new? What did you spot? What were you doing? What was your stomach doing? I hope it was digesting your meal. What were you thinking? How are you feeling? How does your body feel? What are you noticing? Now that can be a really valuable exercise, just to draw attention to yourself. There's going to be one last exercise that I'm going to introduce you to in a few moments' time. Before I do that, just to let you know that I'm putting on, it's going to be next Monday, so it may be a little late in your planning. However, if you're at all interested, we do a day and a half's training on how to develop your gravitas based on where you've come from, your family values, what's moulded you, what your strengths are. Number 2, what you're doing in the present, in other words, what's your intention? And number 3, where are you headed? In order to develop your leadership capacity to grow and develop in terms of your gravitas, your substance, the ground of your being. One last thing. And that's this. In a few moments' time, I'm going to ask you to stand up once more, then bend over and go, yes! Okay? This is a useful exercise to help energize you and drive you forward. Okay, up you go. Okay, ladies. On your marks, get set, go. Yes! Bravo. Thank you. And I get a round of applause with you standing. Thank you.